Welcome to today's webinar, The Secret to Mobilizing Funds for Agricultural SMEs. We are expecting a large crowd today, so we will wait a minute to get them settled. So please bear with us, but welcome to this webinar. My name is Hedwig Siewertsen. I'm the Head of Inclusive Finance of AGRA, and I will be your moderator today. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, The Secret to Mobilizing Funds for Agricultural SMEs. Today's webinar is being hosted by AGRA, the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, and our presenters today are from AGRA, the Center for Financial Inclusion, and SCOPEinsight. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share the link with you after the event is complete. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. We also invite your comments and questions, but please hold them until the end. You can chat in the chat box, in the question box, you can put your questions. You will not be able to see the questions of other people, but they will come to the organizers and we will select the questions we would like to ask to the panel. There will be ample of time towards the end of the webinar to ask the questions. If your question is not being answered, we can answer it afterwards because we will receive all the questions in writing with your name and your address. So you will get answers if you post a question in the box. These were the housekeeping rules. I would now like to introduce you to our impressive lineup of speakers. That sounds a bit weird because I'm the first speaker. I'm Hedwig Siewertsen, as I already said. I'm the Head of Inclusive Finance in AGRA. After that, we will hear from SCOPEinsight's Chief Operating Officer, Marise Blom. She will be followed by Henry Bruce, the Director of Research from the Center for Financial Inclusions. And after him, Ada Dokle will present the outcome of the research they did for us. So let's get started. The agenda for this webinar is as follows. We will have 6 topics. The first section will cover why AGRA invested in this Bankability Metrics, because that's what we're going to talk about. That's the secret. So those of you who only wanted to be the secret, that's the secret. The second part will explain why agricultural SMEs fail to get access to finance. Then the third part will cover why a common language is essential to access finance. Then we will uncover what the secret language is and what can be found in the Bankability report. Then we will explain how this can become the normal, and we will finish by a short Q&A session where you can type your questions in the chat. So let's get started and understand a bit who we have in the room by launching a poll. So you can vote. So the first question is, access to finance is the main barrier for agricultural enterprise growth. If you think that's true, you click yes. If you think it's not the main barrier, you click no. So please give your votes. Frank, are we done? Yes, we're done. So 76% of the attendees, and we are already at 211 attendees, 76% of you thinks yes, access to finance is the main barrier for enterprise growth. 24% says no, they think there's other barriers. So let's get into that problem. What is the problem that we want to address? So in Africa, agriculture represents the largest opportunity to reach the SDGs. By 2030. But I first wanted to introduce you AGRA, because AGRA was created, maybe some of you don't know who AGRA is. AGRA was created by Kofi Annan in 2006 to facilitate a uniquely African green revolution, whereby millions of small-scale producers would be enabled to improve their yields and income in a sustainable manner. Now, in order to reach those millions of farmers with improved seeds, improved fertilizers, post-harvest technology, and access to markets, all those services are delivered by small and medium-sized enterprises. So if these medium and micro and small enterprises are not competitive and not performing, then we have a problem, because then they will fail to reach the farmers and we will fail to deliver the green revolution. So making these micro, small and medium-sized enterprises more competitive means that they also need access to finance. It's not only access to finance, it's also access to business development services. But access to finance, as you all said, is important. So although it's so important, and although agriculture is a very important sector in Africa, the annual lending gap in sub-Saharan Africa is estimated to be $65 billion per year. So this reality translates into agriculture SMEs not having the necessary finance to grow, and investors are missing big investment opportunities. So why is it that SMEs do not get access to finance? There are many reasons for micro and small enterprises not getting access to finance. Some are related to the enterprises themselves, and some are related to the way financiers think about micro and small enterprises. Most companies cannot easily prove to banks that they can productively use the loan and repay it. I mean, an old-time classic for me is that if you want to explain what a banker does, then in fact a banker is somebody who can give you or lend you money if you can prove to him or her that you don't need the money. And I think that is, in a sense, quite true, right? If you can prove that you have enough collateral, that you have a lot of cash, that you have a well-run business, then the banker feels comfortable to lend you the money. So how do we need to support the micro and small enterprises in an efficient manner that they can repay the money? And it needs to be efficient, because for bankers, time is money. So they don't want to spend a lot of time on you to understand whether you are a creditworthy enterprise. So we are interested as AGRA to understand how can we, as fast as possible, understand whether an SME is financeable, bankable, investable, and that you are an interesting client for a financier. Now, the most important thing is that we start to speak the same language, that we understand each other. That's the way to do efficient business, and that we can talk to each other. So this is the story why AGRA invested in this bankability metrics, the need for a common language. So in order to support micro and small enterprises and banks to speak that same language, AGRA looked at how the market for micro enterprises boomed in the 90s. Microfinance institutions evolved from marginal, small, non-professional institutions run by NGOs into a very flourishing sector. Microfinance institutions are now part of the financial sector in most countries. It started to bloom when MFIs, funders and supporters agreed on a common performance standards, and they started to use those standards in rating tools and during due diligence. So the investors and the financiers and the microfinance institutions adopted a common language on what it means to be a well-performing microfinance institution. These standards then evolved into a matchmaking platform where microfinance institutions and financiers, investors would meet. That was called the mixed market, and that became one of the largest data sharing platforms for the microfinance sector, brokering millions of dollars each year. Now, we saw the analogy. What if we can develop such common language, common indicators between agricultural SMEs and financiers that can be used for rating, for due diligence purposes, and for performance measurement? Wouldn't that be fantastic? And see where we are today. Sharing with you version 1.0 of a common language between agricultural SMEs and financiers. So I would now like to introduce to you Marise Blom from SCOPEinsight, who has already been working on a common language for the past 10 years. So over to you, Marise, to introduce a deeper dive into a common language for agricultural SMEs. Over to you, Marise.
Thank you so much, Hedwig, and thank you so much for supporting this, because in this whole trajectory of getting here, we spoke with so many parties, and I think that many agree that this can indeed be, hopefully such a game-changing thing as it was then with mixed market. What I want to do is to dive in a little bit deeper on the basic, the sort of important barriers that we see and that need to be addressed when solving this access to finance challenge. And what we see is that people find it very risky to lend or to invest in agriculture. Also, lenders or investors, as Hedwig calls them, find it also very costly. It's difficult to gather data, and there's a lack of standards. So each of these three things I want to dive in deeper in the next slides. One of the main things is that agribusinesses or agri-SMEs are often not managed as a business, which makes them risky, right? So because lenders and investors want a reliable business partner. So agri-SMEs need to demonstrate that they are these robust businesses and that they do have a track record and that they graduated to become these solid businesses, and that they can demonstrate this in a measurable way. So the track record of that agri-SME needs to speak that same language that a lender understands. So whatever graduation process this agri-SME goes through, I think it's important that it needs to be focusing on that business, because if you don't focus on that business, then a lot of other interventions such as gender or youth don't fall in fertile ground. So the business part of it is actually the core of things, and doing this in a market-led way, so that the sorry, can you go back one? Do it in a market-led way, and make sure that the results of that whole trajectory and that track record are indeed measurable and can be communicated. So that part reduces the risk. So that was the first thing that I mentioned. Then the cost aspect of this. So the common language and better data can inform parties better. So the agri-SMEs on the one hand and the lenders or the investors on the other hand. So the agri-SMEs need to know what is expected of me. Am I ready for a loan? Who is the right lender for me? So all those questions can help if there is a common language that can help cross that barrier. And also the lenders, they want to know, what's the quality of the data? Can I trust that data? What is we see a very big role also for NGOs and BDS providers in that, because the lenders need to have that data, trust it, and if we can present this in a way, present this pipeline to the lenders, or that lenders, for instance, just post these metrics on their website and say, fill it in, then that is a way that the cost can really be brought down, so that they can do a pre-selection before they decide to spend a lot of time and effort in investigating if this is the right client for them. So that's how the cost can be brought down. So if we have that common language and we have these metrics that everybody then can use, what does that lead to? So there is an increased transparency and this better data that benefits all these different stakeholders. There is a better and targeted BDS for the agribusinesses, because now it is more clear where they need to go. So what does it mean to be a bankable organization? What metrics do you need to provide? And what does that mean for your organization to become, to get there? If these metrics and this data is delivered to the lender, if they get this in a reasonably easy way without them going out in the field and gathering the data, it can really decrease the cost and also the risk. If that is, it links a little bit to the trust in the data, then they can do that pre-due diligence phase, choose the ones that fit their needs and fit their criteria. And then in their due diligence phase, they will have a much better success rate. So they will, with all the time they spend then on the further process, the costs really will go down. And also because they have a better quality pipeline, the risk will go down. So overall, the increased visibility in this sector has a lot of benefits. Because not only will the agri-SMEs know which lenders are good for them, but also maybe if they go to a lender which might not be a good fit for them, the lender might also know somebody else who fits in a sort of different place in the market, a different sector. So maybe a larger lender can then direct them to an MFI and say, okay, maybe you're a better fit for them. So it's that transparency that will make all these connections possible. And, well, as I mentioned already, bring down this cost and the risks. So what will happen? Imagine if the different silos that are now in the market, the silos of the agri-SMEs on the one hand, and the silo of the lenders and the investors on the other hand. What if these two parts of the market can actually communicate better? And you see these bankability metrics in the middle, and it almost seems like gold letters there. Sort of the magic golden letters that will bridge that gap. And we do believe that if these metrics are adopted in that graduation process, making these businesses more robust and more transparent for lenders, but also for the lenders who so eagerly want to service that market but can't because it's so costly. So using those bankability metrics can bridge those gaps. It just depends on how the different parts of the different stakeholders adopt it. And we see a very big role also for, as I already mentioned, the NGOs and the BDS providers in the first phase at least to have that quality seal on that data, because trust will be very, very important in this process. So for us and also for SCOPEinsight, we envision that sort of pipeline of all the assessments that have been done using our tools. That's one way that we can sort of deliver this pipeline to lenders, but that portal will also be open to other sources of pipeline using these bankability metrics, because the bankability metrics will be their linking pin. It will be like a LinkedIn for agriculture. So that's at least our hope and dream, and we're looking also for partners to do that. But I hope that with these few slides, I've sort of laid out the scene for what a secret language, this common language, these common bankability metrics can do. And now, for revealing the real secret, I hand over to Henry.
Thank you, Marisa. So we've heard about the need for growth in the agricultural sector and the barriers hindering access to finance and professionalisation of agri-SMEs. So what is this secret that we've been talking about that has the power to alleviate some of these barriers and get agri-SMEs and lenders talking the same language? What is in the source that will enable agri-SMEs and the service providers they work with to better prepare for their loan assessments, bolster their creditworthiness, and respond more quickly and efficiently? What are the ingredients that will give lenders enough of an overview of an agri-SME's business to confidently and efficiently decide to move ahead with due diligence? Just a couple more minutes and we will give you all the ingredients. We will show you all the details of the recipe. First, just a quick look at the insights from our research on lenders' behaviours. Sorry, we appear to have gone to the poll. Thank you. If we could just go back a slide. Just a quick look at the insights from our research on lenders' behaviours. And to give you an idea of the scope of our research, this included literature research. We interviewed and surveyed over 90 industry actors involved in agri-SME lending, from social lenders, local financial institutions, TA and BDS providers, and other supporting actors. We analysed forms, documents, and templates from different lenders, created an advisory council of sector experts, and did some comprehensive analysis of SCOPEinsight's dataset, considering other relevant standards. And this is what we uncovered. 3 common lender behaviours that are hindering lending. Firstly, some uncertainty about which metrics are the most relevant at each stage of the deal flow. The information requested by lenders lacks a clear set of priorities, particularly earlier in the process, that would enable lenders to perform efficient pre-screening and initial evaluations. They collect many generic business metrics. When lenders were asked to prioritise, their responses varied and included quantitative and qualitative metrics. And they request everything early on. Given the high cost of due diligence, lenders understandably request a lot of information, but this hasn't been optimized for pre-due diligence. So lenders end up requesting this long list of information from prospective clients right at the start. This decreased efficiency and certainty increases time and effort and risk, which ultimately hinders lending, particularly to smaller and less formal agri-SMEs. For lenders, it's clear, as we've been saying, deciding on a set of metrics can save them time and help them evaluate risk more effectively. And before we go into the details and I hand over to Ada, a quick poll as a segue into that, into the recipe. When applying for lending, management experience, staff, and decision-making processes are as important as its financials to lenders. Yes or no? And just a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds maybe to submit or cast your votes. And hopefully we have the results.
63% voted. The results, 90% says yes. So
Great.
yes, management is as important as the financials.
And this is fantastic validation of our research. And for that, I will hand over to Ada to talk about all the details of our recipe.
Thank you. So not yet to metrics. We want to go back to good news, what we think. So like Henry mentioned, we spoke to lenders to understand the challenges that they were facing to assess the bankability of agri-SMEs. And most of the lenders wish to look beyond the financials to areas like business activity and governance. There was unanimity among the lenders on the importance of assessing management capacity and governance strength of an agri-SME. However, what we noticed was that their assessment varies a lot and it was challenging for them to identify which metrics shall be used to assess these very important areas. After the interviews, we went to the data to see what the data would tell us, and we leveraged two main data sets. The first one is from SCOPEinsight, which is around 400 indicators on over 2,000 SMEs across the globe, and they assess the professionalism of Agri SMEs. What we found out was that high scores in areas like pricing and market monitoring, or risk and compliance, governance, business planning, increase the likelihood of an Agri SME to receive a loan. To put it differently, metrics related to business professionalism, management, and governance are critical in determining the creditworthiness of a business. This finding was substantiated by another important finding we found in the CSEF data. There, we observed that governance and internal management are the primary reasons for default in agri-SME loans. And this makes the ability of a lender to assess against these areas very important for successful lending. So we think these two sets of highlights make out for a great opportunity for agri-SMEs to demonstrate their creditworthiness, even as an alternative to physical collateral or beyond that. So without further ado, I'm going to move to metrics. So the bankability metrics, this common language that we have been talking that will bring lenders and agri-SMEs together, is organized around a typical lender's deal flow. And it usually is, these are a set of metrics that are applied in the pre-due diligence phase of a deal flow. Usually, a lender starts its process with a sourcing and a pre-screening step where they request general information from the businesses. And then they move to an initial assessment of these agri-SMEs where they aim to determine if this business is creditworthy or not. Having this in mind, we have structured the metrics around two main groups. The first one you see in the left-hand side of this visual is the general section, and then on the right-hand side is the bankability metrics. There are subsections under each group, and I will move quickly around them, but you will have details on the metrics and definitions on each one of them and how you can use them within your company in the report and in other links that we'll share during the webinar. So just briefly on the general section, there is, let's go back to the slide because that's the metric slide. Let me stay here for a minute. On the general section, the information is very simple around company, contact, finance requests, and documents. Our goal was here to find the metrics that have more common ground amongst lenders and be representative of what they are requesting in this particular phase of the deal. These are very common and mostly used. What I want to highlight is the part of the finance request where it's important to be detailed on the amount requested, the period, the reason why, and the ability or the way to repay this loan. Again, the last section of the documents is just a simple list that we found as most commonly used among lenders. To go to the bankability section, that section is structured around the three main areas that we found most important for lenders: the business activity, governance, and the financials. The business activity section has information on the business size, the business size on the business, how many years it has been in the market, on the market links, and so on. The governance shows information, the metrics aim to show information on the management experience and the governance strength, while the financials are a simple a set of metrics on key balance sheet and income statement, as they want to provide a bigger picture on the financial status of the Agri SME. Before I go back to the next slide, I think it is important to emphasize that the scope of the metrics is to assess the bankability and the creditworthiness of an Agri SME, and it's not a final yes decision on a deal, because every lender has a specific risk appetite, and there are specific thresholds linked to factors that are related to these risks. Also, these metrics are not inclusive of all the information that lenders request during the pre-due diligence, but we have tried to find the ones that have more common ground and are more representative, and they do a good job in assessing the bankability of an Agri SME. I think we can go to the next slide. So we're not, like I mentioned, we're not digging deep into the details of every metric, because you can find that in the report. But we're zooming in the business activity and the governance sections, because we consider these very important. On the business activity section has 6 metrics, and their primary goal is to demonstrate core competence of a business in a viable market. So here we have 3 main metrics, and we are trying to show how lenders do interpret these metrics and the information they provide. The first one is top 3 commodities and products by share of sales. Usually lenders see some diversification as a form of increased resilience for a business, but this can also be in addition to the fact that they want the businesses to report their whole activity. There are cases when Agri SMEs tend to report their primary product, but I think a full view of what they do gives more information and reliable one. Second metrics is on top 3 clients, again by share of sales. Being dependent on a client indicates a limited market and a bit of uncertainty on what is next if this client is not there. So how the Agri SME will sell its product if the client is not. We have suggested for this metric to be requested over a few years, a couple of years or 3 years, because we understand that trends are important, but also because there may be cases when a client draws, but then there are other cases when they rejoin. So to account for times of crisis or not. The third one is on current contracts that specify pricing. We often hear from lenders that contracts with prices are an indication that these clients have confidence in the business, and they indicate also strong market and stability. Moving on to the next slide. The governance and the management metrics convey commitment and integrity. This is also the section that is tricky to measure, because while on the business activity and the financials, the metrics are quantitative mostly, on the governance and metrics, they are qualitative, and most lenders tend to verify them during due diligence, and it's very challenging for them to prioritize them during pre-due diligence. But I think we have highlighted here 3 very important ones. First one is recent changes in management. Again, we hear lenders that a revolving door of management can underlie the operational and the people issues, and that distracts from running the business. It leads to problems within it and not a resilient business. The second one is on level of commitment of the business manager to the business. Again, you want a manager who is most of the time dedicated to the business and doesn't share the time of the business with other businesses or with other personal commitments. His focus is on the future of this one. The third one is a clear division of authority between management and the board. The management team, who is affected on its day-to-day decisions, by the board will not be able to operate on their own and ultimately will not succeed in the long term. So this was in a nutshell, just a few metrics, but there is a larger long list of metrics in the report. The third poll that we have for you is, AGRA-SMEs can readily report business activity and governance information. Yes or no?
Thanks, Ada. We'll just wait a few seconds for people to submit their votes. Okay, then the results are yes, 31, no, 69. So some challenges maybe to overcome in reporting this business activity and governance information. That's useful feedback for us to consider. So on the next slide, please, how can this secret go viral? We, as indicated by the results of that poll, this is a starting point. This is version 1.0, as Hedwig mentioned. How do we bring the entire sector, align the entire sector behind these metrics? How can we drive adoption and support their use by stakeholders across the sector? And how can we ensure that this shared understanding helps agri-SMEs be successful businesses, banks lend to agricultural businesses, and break the agri-SME finance deadlock? Well, it's going to take a whole sector effort, as I mentioned, and all stakeholders of all types should benefit. We see lenders as requesting these metrics from prospective agri-SMEs during the pre-screening process. This will save them time and allow them to make a pre-due diligence decision more confidently. They also have an opportunity to clarify their lending expectations by sharing these metrics with the agri-SME support providers they work with. Agri-SMEs themselves should prepare to report these metrics and seek support where required from, say, TA and BDS providers, who are going to be a critical group in driving the adoption. And speaking of them, they can use the metrics to identify an agri-SME's pain points, whether in governance or business activity, reporting, building capacity in those areas. And they can also use these metrics to seek minimum lending requirements from the lenders in their network, establishing a clear baseline of eligibility for each lender and supporting the matchmaking of the agri-SMEs and the lenders. Donors, of course, are a really important stakeholder here, and they have this opportunity to maximize their leverage by prescribing the use of these metrics in the work that they support, contributing over time, as Marisa mentioned, to greater visibility across the sector. Widespread adoption could also improve the efficiency of matchmaking platforms, including the AGRF deal room and hundreds of other investment services and information solutions like VC for Africa and AVPA in Africa and of course beyond. And yourselves, all of you here today, you're in a prime position to start getting the benefits from using these metrics. If you'd like to be involved, particularly if you'd like to pilot adoption of these metrics, please get in touch with the team. In summary, lower transaction costs are one less barrier for agri-SMEs accessing the finance they need to grow and for us to meet the food needs of the future. And we'll close with one last poll. When will you start adopting the bankability metrics? Think about when you might be able to begin adopting these metrics in your organization, incorporating them into your processes. Is this something that will be possible for your organization in the short term or longer term? How easy or hard will this be for you? We'd love to get your feedback on this, your views on how quickly or how soon you might be able to start thinking about adopting these bankability metrics in your organization. A mix, but fantastic to see so many saying that this is something that you'll be able to start adopting in the next year. That's fantastic news, the majority even. And as I mentioned, we are here and would love to support those of you who are doing this. Please do get in touch, follow up with us after the webinar, and stay in touch to hear more. And on the last slide here, before I open the floor for questions, a quick preview, well, a preview of the report indeed, which will be published tomorrow. So you can go ahead and read the report using the link on the slide there. A note, as Ada said, that this includes tables of metric names and descriptions. You'll also find a link in Appendix 3 to download a data collection form that adds to the names and descriptions, field types, field validations, lookups, to make it as easy as possible to report and collect and report this set of metrics, whether for yourself as an Agri SME to review internally, see where you need some capacity support, you need to focus your efforts, or to request from others as lenders might do. And with that, I will hand back to Hedwig to facilitate any questions.
Thank you, dear speakers. This was a great presentation, and I'm really thrilled by the fact that so many people see this as a useful thing, and we've gotten nice feedback on in the chat box. I mean, some of the things is is this available in French? So that is maybe something we can do. The definition of SMEs was there. I've answered that question. But let me go to an interesting question, maybe to you, Marise. One of the questions is, can NGOs help the lenders to collect the data? Because collecting data is expensive. So maybe you can give some ideas on that. Is that a role NGOs can play, and how would lenders see that? I mean, Henry and Etla, if you want to comment, but I have other questions for you. But I thought this one would be nice for Marise. Go ahead.
Thank you, Hedwig. Yes, I think NGOs, and I think I already said it also in my presentation, because I do think that NGOs play a crucial role, especially in the beginning, because a lot of the work that NGOs do, and also BDS providers, by the way, the local BDS providers who we at SCOPEinsight call the local experts, they are in a very good position because they already work with these Agri SMEs. A lot of their programs are already focused on creating access to finance. So if they, in their work, use these bankability metrics in helping these Agri SMEs and providing that to the lenders, I think the lenders will be eager to get that information, and especially because with the NGO, I mean, if an NGO passes on information that is not credible and not correct, then yeah, it will be quite easy to see. Then that trust will then sort of wither away. So if they do provide that quality seal on that data, it will tremendously help these lenders bring down their cost and help in that first phase. So yes, I do think they have a crucial role. And I do think that and of course, there are different ways. We at SCOPEinsight, of course, have our tools that measure this, but there are many different ways to measure this, to help this, and to adopt this. So I would encourage every one of the NGOs and BDS providers to use these metrics and to deliver it in this way to the lender, even if the lender is not asking for it. I would just go ahead and do it that way.
Thanks, Maries. Yeah, so it's also a way for BDS providers to help SMEs to go to the bank, right? So that these metrics are at least are built from what lenders told their researchers. Maybe a question to you, Henry. How about skin in the game? Isn't that a very important indicator for credible entrepreneurs and good enterprises? And how is that incorporated in the metrics? Is there something you can comment on?
That's a good question. Ada, I wondered if you had any thoughts on that actually, and when we think about that. Not to hand the question.
But we can make it as a discussion. What do we understand by skin in the game? Probably.
Well, I think it's how much money have people put in their business themselves. So, I mean, I would think it's captured in the financial data.
It is. But I think we are trying to bring the focus to another set of metrics, because I think so far lending has always been about financials, and it has always looked like the lenders are prioritizing financials. While they are important, we don't want to undermine that. I think these two main groups of business activity and management and governance are very important. So we have seen lenders prioritizing these and putting them upfront. So I think these are the two most important areas. We should not undermine the rest, and we're not like every lender has its own risk appetite, like we mentioned. We should not forget it. But let's focus. I think my advice to Agri SMEs would be to focus strengthening their business activity metrics and performance and the governance and management skills.
Yeah, maybe I can also add to the, sorry, Henry, but maybe I can add to this, because this is something I think investors ask more often than lenders. And that might also be a little bit of a difference, because we have spoken predominantly with lenders. And I think investors very much, of course, want that skin in the game from the Agri SME. Henry.
So maybe I can add a question for you then, Henry, because somebody has also been asking, are these metrics also valid for equity investors? So maybe to build onto that.
Yes. So I might add one further thought to the previous question. I think Ada highlighted, level of commitment of the business manager to the business. We have a couple of things around business management and the owner of the business that I think represent skin in the game in a slightly different way to purely financials, as Ada mentioned. So we saw that as something that lenders focused on. So I think it kind of, as Ada mentioned, like a different interpretation of skin in the game, which is represented in the metrics. With regards to the question on equity, we focused on lending to start with. A lot of these metrics would be appropriate also for those seeking or assessing equity investments, but that wasn't necessarily the focus. There were a number of areas we identified where we could consider incremental versions or kind of add-on packs to the metrics. Equity investments might be one of those. We also thought about a number of things in the impacts, kind of climate resilience under that umbrella that were of interest to a number of lenders, not all, and could be the focus of subsequent research here.
Okay, thank you. I think we have some questions about what's so special in terms of this being appropriate for SMEs, because some people say, yeah, these questions is what lenders ask. So what do you feel, maybe Ada, what is different about this than what was always done in the past? I think you started your presentation by sharing that lenders had a very wide request for information, that it was not focused, that there was no prioritization. Maybe you can talk a bit to that, because I think that's maybe where this is different from saying, yeah, every financier wants to have this type of information. Maybe you can talk a bit to that, to bring that out again.
Yes, I like the metrics. If we go to them one by one, probably most of them have nothing new. their general business metrics. But the process is a bit different that we are recommending. The lending process that we noticed from our research with the lender is a bit chaotic in the sense that lenders want to request a lot of information up front. I mean, as much as possible. If you talk to lender, they will just ask you for a long list of information. And if you are an Agri SME, of course, you become scared, afraid. I mean, that's a long list. Probably that just makes you unbankable, even if you probably pass most of the requirements. So we wanted to prioritize the most important metrics, like so that we encourage the whole process to be more efficient, not only for Agri SMEs, like to become bankable easier, but also for lenders, the process would be more efficient through asking only the metrics that they need upfront. They don't need to ask all the information upfront if they don't need it, because it complicates the process and it makes it a bit scarier. Like I heard in a recent AGRA's webinar from lenders, investors, and Agri SMEs that it's important to be on the same table. And for them to be on the same table, they need to speak the same language, and for Agri SMEs to be ready to speak the same language. By making the process a bit scarier, I think we're not getting there.
Thanks a lot, Eda. I think that is clear, right? I think it's what we try to do is to make that funnel of deal screening more efficient and to get the right information in the right time. To make the screening more efficient and less costly. I think that was what we set out to do. And of course, the information in the end, if the deal goes through, maybe all the information will have come through, but we will have spent less time on doing the deal. I don't know who wants to take this question, but there's quite some people that have asked about specific metrics to do with women and youth businesses. Have you looked at that? Because women tend to have, and youth tend to have more difficulties in accessing finance. Is that anything you have considered during your work? I don't know who wants to go. I feel tempted, but you need to go.
Yeah, I think of course it was a topic of discussion because women and youth is a very focused area for a lot of projects and programs. And I think it's a little bit like because we do think that at least also at SCOPEinsight we do have those metrics, and I think they're important. But if you want to drill down and really choose the metrics that are absolutely necessary to bridge this gap, we left them out now. So to really make it a short list of these bankability metrics, easier to adopt, easier to use. And I can imagine in the future, just like Henry was saying, on the impact area or in gender and youth, that we can add to that. But everything that you add will make it more complicated again. So I think that's one of the things that, that our advice is to let's start here, let's learn, let's see if this works. And then, of course, we can, sort of add things in the future.
We had some difficult conversations about what to include and what to exclude, and some interesting conversations. But as Marisa said, ultimately we erred on the side of the bare minimum to start with the view that we can start speaking. If we can start speaking that as a common language, that's something that we can build on.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, there's a lot of questions on where to access the metrics, etc. I think we maybe want to put up the slide with the questions so that people can note down. I mean, on the AGRA website, you should be able to find everything, but you can also reach out to any of us. Maybe another question I saw is people asking, where can we find the lender? If I'm an SME, who do I find the lender? So that would already talk maybe about the matchmaking platform. right? Is that something you have thought of? How do we see that? Because in the end, these metrics are also meant to bring agriculture SMEs and lenders or investors easier together, right? The first step is maybe to speak the same language, and that's what you have worked on. Is the next step a matchmaking platform, or is it trying to get these metrics being used by all of the already existing matchmaking platforms? Who wants to say something?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and then others can follow. But I think the next step is not the matchmaking platform, I would say. I mean, the next step, I think, is for lenders to articulate using these metrics what their requirements are. And that will be the next step. So that's the homework I would like to give to lenders. Look at these bankability metrics, see which ones are crucial and fill them in. Say, okay, this needs to be minimal this, or this needs to be that, for us to even consider you as a client. Because if you have that, then you can already maybe, in an informal way, find each other in programs, and I'm happy to see that more and more financial institutions are incorporated in development programs. So from the early start of setting up these programs and the designing these programs, financial institutions are included in this. But what is still very difficult for financial institutions, lenders, investors, is to put out their criteria. And if they can use these bankability metrics to make their criteria known, and even post them on the website, I think that already would help a lot. And once we have that pipeline, which we need to develop with all the BDS providers and the NGOs, hopefully with the force of donors behind that, then we have the basics that are necessary, namely that pipeline and the requirements of the lenders, and then it's an easy one to make that matchmaking platform.
And maybe to build on that, Marisa, I think kind of continuing the analogy of language, we're building this language to enable people to talk together, talk to each other. If we were to designate just one place for people to meet, that place would be overrun. There would be very long lines. It would be impossible to get in. So with the language, we want to create as many meeting places as possible. And I think that's where we're starting with the lenders. Through our research, we have been talking to a number of the matchmaking platforms and services that are out there, and hope to seed parts of their platform with these metrics as a kind of a baseline for their investors or lenders to build on. So that's a kind of a starting point for us.
Ada, you wanted to add something to that?
No, I mean, Henry said it. Let's not crowd the place.
I think we are coming to the end of the webinar. Maybe you want to amplify. We have many more questions. We have a lot of positive feedback. People really like it. They want to get them. They want to see the metrics. I even see people asking for where can I be trained on using these metrics. So that's another product you can start working on in CFI or Scope. How can we get these adopted? I think this is really should go viral, and I mean, take time to absorb and internalize what is in it. And I think the main message for me is that it goes beyond financial metrics, because some people said we have equipment, asset-based financing. In the UK, people can get easily loans for farms based on the assets on the farm. And I think the problem we try to address is that people lack often the assets and the collateral, and that there is a lot of collateral-based lending in Africa, and we need to go beyond that. And I think the metrics were designed to go beyond collateral, because if you can prove that you're rich and you have assets, then you can go to the bank. You don't need this. But I think what you have tried to do is to develop metrics beyond financial data and beyond assets and collateral. And that is exactly these business activities. And because that is such a wide variety of indicators you can look at, I think you have really tried to focus on the ones that matter, based on the experience and the databases that your respondents, let's thank the respondents to your research and all the people that participated, because there were 90 or 100 people, financial institutions, BDS providers. So I'm sure many of them are in the room. I really would like to thank you for participating in this, and please, it's your result. Thanks to the researchers for undertaking. Is there one big wish for each of you before we close out? Ada, one big wish?
Yes, let's start speaking the common language. Should be easy.
Thanks, that sounds great. Henry?
Another difficult question, Hedwig. Yeah, I think we're starting somewhere. We acknowledge that it's not perfect. It's not, it's not going to be a silver bullet or a panacea, but hopefully this is a good start. So I think we can approach it from that perspective.
Marisa, some final thoughts?
From SCOPEinsight, our wish is really to leverage on the activities in the business we already do with our clients and try to link that pipeline in specific countries to lenders. So we would want to pilot this in 1, 2, 3 countries so that we can see, does it work? How does it work? Should we adjust it and learn from it? So that's what we would want to do.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I think as AGRA, we really want to use this as a yardstick, a guideline, something we can give to agriculture SMEs who say, I want access to finance, where do I start? I think this is a starting guide. What do you need to focus on? What are the key things you need to work on to improve your performance and to become a credible interlocutor to a bank? I think that is what we wanted to achieve. And I'm very happy that there were 350 people who have listened to us. If they all start to spread to each of them to another 350 people, I think we are getting there of getting these metrics going viral. I think we have a lot of follow-up to do because there were many more questions, many more comments. We will do that and we will share the presentations that we made. And the metrics are on the AGRA website. So maybe to close this off, we can keep the slide 25 on the screen. I'm not sure whether that's possible, but then people at least can see where the link is. Some people have said that the link doesn't work, so we will check on that. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much, Henry and Ada and Maurice, for doing this work, and all the people that participated in this research. And thank you for listening to us. And this is the start of the secret going viral. Thank you all. And
thank you so much, Hedwig.
Thank
you, AGRA.
Thank you.